Hey there, fellow bookworms. Ready for a deep dive into some seriously different worlds? We're talking The Wind in the Willows and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's wild how these stories, one whimsical the other, well, kind of spooky, can both teach us so much about being human.
What's fascinating to me is how they tackle similar themes, even with those contrasting styles, like transformation, how we change, and the weight of what society expects from us, even the very idea of belief itself. Those ideas are woven right into both stories.
Right. You wouldn't think talking animals and a headless horseman had much in common. But here we are. Let's kick things off with that wild ride, The Wind in the Willows. We've got Mr. Toad, right? Totally impulsive, obsessed with every fad that comes along. It's like he read Keeping Up with the Joneses and decided to make his own crazy version. What's the setting for all this chaos?
Well, the story takes place in the peaceful English countryside, which, makes it even funnier when Toad starts creating mayhem. He's surrounded by all these animals, but they're like us, They're dealing with friendships, trying to fit in with societal norms. And then there's Toad with his, shall we say, flexible impulse control. He's got to have the latest craze. This time it's a motor car. And of course, that sends him spiraling into all these crazy misadventures, legal trouble, almost losing his precious Toad Hall, you name it.
It's like that one friend we all have who always has to have the newest phone, the latest gadget, even if it means going broke. Except Toad takes it to a whole other level, right?
Absolutely. What he does has some serious consequences. I mean, yeah, it's comical, but it makes you think about our own relationship with stuff. Like, does having the newest thing really equal happiness? Toad's experience, well, kind of says otherwise.
Right. Makes you wonder what Toad's Amazon cart would look like. But let's talk about his friends, poor Rat, Malay, and Badger. Talk about loyalty. They're always stuck cleaning up his messes.
And that's one of the things I love most about the story, that friendship endures. Toad messes up constantly, but his friends never give up on him. They see the good in him, even when he's being, well, Toad.
It's a good reminder, right? We all need those friends who stick around, even when we're being a total toad. Okay,
Ah,
get ready for a change of scenery because we're heading to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Just the name gives me chills. That image of the Headless Horseman, talk about spooky. Why do you think this story has stuck with people for so long?
well, Washington Irving, the author, he knew how to weave a tale. Folklore, superstition, social commentary. He blends it all together and creates this chilling atmosphere that really gets under your skin. So you've got Ichabod Crane, this awkward schoolmaster, arrives in Sleepy Hollow. He's got ghost stories on his mind and his heart set on Katrina Van Tassel, the wealthy farmer's daughter.
Ooh, I see where this is going. Classic love triangle, but with a supernatural twist.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't forget Brom Bones, the town heartthrob. He's got his eye on Katrina, too. Talk about a recipe for drama.
Right. You just know sparks are going to fly. And Sleepy Hollow, it's not exactly the most relaxing setting for a love triangle, is it?
Not with that headless horseman lurking about. But before we get to him, let's talk about Ichabod and Brom. They're more than just rivals for Katrina's affections, right?
Exactly. Ichabod, he's the outsider, bookish, kind of superstitious, a real contrast to Brom. He's all about tradition, local lore. So their rivalry, it's not just about Katrina, it's about values, perceptions, like two different ways of seeing the world.
Speaking of different ways of seeing the world, that headless horseman, what's the deal with that terrifying figure? Real, imagination run wild, something else entirely.
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. And that's the genius of Irving. He leaves us guessing. That ambiguity, it's part of why the story is so darn creepy. Did Ichabod really see a ghost? Or did his fear, his ambition, create the Headless Horseman out of thin air?
It's like the story is holding up a mirror to our own beliefs, isn't it? What are we willing to believe, especially when it comes to our deepest fears or desires?
Absolutely. And, this goes back to what we were saying about Toad. They both give in to their desires, right? Toad, he's all about the latest fad. Ichabod, he's chasing love, social status.
That's a really interesting connection. Both of them, their judgment gets clouded by what they want.
Yeah.
And it leads to some pretty big consequences. But it's also like their downfalls. They're influenced by the world around them, too. Toad, he's caught up in this consumerist society. And Ichabod, he falls prey to all those spooky stories, the superstitions of Sleepy Hollow.
You got it. Neither story pretends that social influence doesn't exist. Toad, he feels the pressure to keep up with everyone else. Ichabod, his actions are totally shaped by all those rumors and legends. Makes you think, how much do our environments influence what we believe, what we do?
It makes you want to take a good hard look at the company you keep, literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah.
But let's go back to those supportive friends for a minute. We know Toad's pals always have his back. But what happens when he really screws up?
Well, remember that whole motorcar obsession? Yeah, that lands Toad in some serious trouble with the law, his finances, the whole shebang. His friends, though, they're exasperated, sure, but they come through for him. Badger, he's the voice of reason, right? Becomes Toad's accountant, tries to salvage what he can.
Badger for the win.
Yeah,
We all need a friend like that, am I right? The responsible one?
absolutely. He sees the situation clearly and steps up, even though it means dealing with Toad. Talk about a good friend. Shows that real friendship. It's about the good times, Zany, the messy cleanup afterward.
Speaking of messy,
Ah,
let's head back to that unsettling world of Sleepy Hollow. Irving really nails the atmosphere. Dark woods, whispering trees, misty marshes. It's like stepping into a spooky painting.
he was a master of language, no doubt. You can practically feel the chills reading those descriptions. But it's not just the images, it's how he weaves those local legends, those superstitions, right into the story. Plays on our primal fears.
It's like the setting itself becomes another character, full of hidden dangers, lurking shadows. And Ichabod, he's already got a head full of ghost stories. Of course he's going to be spooked.
Exactly. He's primed and ready to believe in the Headless Horseman. But let's not forget that love triangle. Ichabod arrives, disrupts the whole social order, especially with Brahm vying for Katrina's attention. Jealousy, ambition, it all adds fuel to the fire. A classic love triangle, but with that supernatural twist.
And you have to wonder, how much of Ichabod's fear is real? How much is just him? Like, he wants to believe in the supernatural. Maybe it justifies his anxieties, or even gives him an excuse for his own mistakes.
Interesting point. Makes you think about confirmation bias, doesn't it? We tend to favor information that already fits with what we believe, even if it's not rational. Ichabod's so sure about the supernatural, every little noise, every creak. It's the Headless Horseman.
Makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves, the things we choose to believe, and how those beliefs end up shaping our reality.
It's kind of amazing, right? Our minds can create our biggest dreams, and our worst nightmares. And then those inner stories collide with the real world. Wind in the Willows, Sleepy Hollow, they both show us that collision in these really captivating ways.
Totally. Toad's caught up in that gotta-have-it mentality. Ichabod's chasing love and status in a town full of superstitions.
Human desires, right?
But their downfalls, they also warn us about what happens when ambition gets out of control, and about how much power society has over us.
Exactly. It reminds us we're not just individuals floating out there. Our choices, our beliefs, even our fears, the world around us shapes them. But it's really interesting. Even with those darker parts, these stories have hope. It's the power of friendship, of community.
You're right. Toad's friends are always there for him, no matter how many times he messes up. Even when he's at his worst, they see the best in him. Real friendship right there.
And even in Sleepy Hollow, with all that spooky atmosphere, that sense of dread, there's still community. That shared history brings the townspeople together. Sure, they gossip, they love a good ghost story, but they also look out for each other, find comfort in those shared experiences.
Good point. Even when things are uncertain, when we're facing those deep down fears, connection with other people can make us strong, help us bounce back.
That's it. Both stories, in their own way, they underline how important that human connection is. Toad's loyal friends, the people of Sleepy Hollow, bound by their folklore and traditions. It's like these tales are saying, look, we're not alone in this, not when we face life's challenges.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway? What can we learn from a Toad who loves his car a little too much and a schoolmaster who's maybe a little too interested in ghosts?
What gets me about these stories, they last. They speak to these universal truths about being human. They remind us we're all tempted by wanting things, by status, by fear itself. But they also give us hope. They show us how strong friendship can be, how important community is, and how powerful it is to just look inward, examine ourselves.
Beautifully put. It seems like no matter what world we explore, talking animals or spooky horsemen, there are always lessons to be learned about ourselves, about the world around us. And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more journeys into the worlds of literature, film, and everything in between. Until next time, happy reading.